Back live to Capitol Hill, Cory Booker.
On dreamers in this country. The overwhelming majority of this nation understands that these are folks who serve in our military, teach in our schools. These are some of the best minds we have in our country with degrees and things that I might have a hard time spelling. These are folks who I believe most Americans understand. They have value, they have worth, they're a part of our economy, they help to create jobs, they're our hope, they're our future as well. So I think there's a pathway forward. I hate the fact, though, that there's all these folks in our country who are right now living in anguished anxiety, watching themselves being used. Citizens who have proven themselves to this country, served this country, sacrificed this country, been first responders, military people, they're now being used as political pawns to achieve things that even people who deal in Homeland Security know we don't need, which is a massive continuous wall. So we each have a lot of shared goals. We all want to make sure that our borders are safe and secure. We all want to make sure that we find ways out for serious criminals from this country. But to use dreamers as a pawn, to use them as a bargaining chip while I've sat with them, while lives are being shaken, undermined, while people's experiences at their jobs and in schools is deteriorating, that's unacceptable to me.
So Senator, your Democratic colleagues, you're saying should not vote for the funding?
I'm not telling I'm a junior member in the United States Senate. I'm telling my Democratic colleagues do whatever they want. I've made up my own mind. I just believe that whatever we come together with an agreement, it should include some certain basic things. It should include child health insurance. How can we be approving spending for all different types of priorities, like the United States military, and have a paucity of money that we need to ensure there's health insurance for our children? To me, this is really a moral moment for our country, where I believe the values we hail are being undermined at every turn. I know the goodness of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle to put children's health care at risk, to put veterans at risk, to put dreamers who are American citizens in every way, but a piece of paper, to put all these things at risk. I can't support legislation that does not include these fundamental things that reflect our values and our ideals as a country. I don't care what your political party is.
Senator, do you think that the DHS secretary was telling the truth to the committee about the meetings?
I find it absolutely hard to believe that she does not remember the language used by the President of the United States of America. And you heard Lindsey Graham give statements that were completely contrary to what she seemed to be asserting and what others in that meeting have asserted. And so this to me is hurtful, because that language wasn't just vulgarity. That language was...
You think the president's a racist?
I think the president's words on a consistent basis have been bigoted and discriminatory against others. I don't want to judge his heart. I can't look into his soul. But when the president of the United States makes statements like he did from the Oval Office, those statements, as I said in my testimony, don't just disappear in the air like mist. They become fetid, they fester, and they explode. They give others license to hate, to reflect that kind of ignorance and bigotry. And we have a real tangible problem in this country with hatred and bigotry, often manifested in outrageous acts of violence. Since 9/11, the majority of the attacks in this country have been right-wing extremist groups who often preach white supremacy. And we have a president of the United States that can't even condemn it, that does not feel a sense of moral outrage, that isn't hurt, and that is reflecting and underlining and strengthening those sentiments by his own. By his own. Every American, every citizen has dignity and worth and value, no matter where they've come from, no matter what their religion, no matter what their race and their ethnicity. But he seems to think that the countries of origins of some Americans are less worthy than the countries of origins of others, which Lindsey Graham himself in that meeting, talking about Scottish immigrants, Irish immigrants, people who are here in this country who escaped terror, who escaped famine, who escaped hostile conditions from decaying countries all throughout Europe, reflecting some of the same conditions we see refugees in now in the modern day of our age. This kind of ignorance, this kind of bigotry is so toxic. Not only is it hurtful to individuals, but it is causing problems in our country. If the President of the United States cannot be a moral voice for unity, for love, for compassion, for empathy, but more importantly, for affirming the dignity, the worth, and the value of every American, no matter their race, religion, color, or creed. And so this is a pattern of speech from this president, and a lack of expression of the moral fiber of this country that has, God, good people of every race and religion. That's the reason why I'm standing here, because of the American spirit, which has overcome so much hate, so much bigotry, so much sexism, so much prejudice. I'm here as a result of that. Let us rejoice in who we are, but we have a president that doesn't even seem to understand our own history of this country. So this hearing was so troubling to me, that somebody would sit there under oath and say that she doesn't recall the words of the President of the United States of America, that she just doesn't happen to remember. And I believe that kind of complicity, that kind of, as King would say, sincere ignorance and conscientious absent-mindedness, that is, it's worse than the person who says the bad things. As King said, that what we have to repent for is not just the vitriolic words and violent actions of bad people, but it's the appalling silence and inaction of the good people. And so here, this country, we know the history of what happens when bystanders stand by and do nothing, or when people just follow orders, like I'm sure she got, to try to nuance her testimony to not answer direct questions from United States senators. We know what happens when people follow orders or just stand by while bigotry, hatred, and that kind of language is used. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Just a question about
New Jersey Senator Cory Booker with some very emotional words and questioning the veracity of the statements by the Secretary of Homeland Security, who suggested she couldn't remember the exact words the president used, remembered by others as being racist in that meeting about immigration on a day where tensions, emotions were very high inside that hearing room. And just one more reminder that one of the things that Lindsey Graham, who went into that meeting believing that there could be compromise, talked about today, was 39-year-old Jorge Garcia, the Detroit man who came to this country as a 10-year-old. He has no record. He's a landscaper. He pays taxes. His wife, his 2 teenage children are American citizens, and who, on the day that honors Martin Luther King Jr., was deported. Went back to Mexico, a country where he has not lived since he was 10 years old. The kind of thing that Lindsey Graham, that Cory Booker, that Dick Durbin all agree on, the importance that there needs to be an agreement on immigration. But with the kind of thing that we're seeing these days, very hard to see how this moves forward. And that's going to wrap up this hour of